What's up, guys? This is Jesse DeRozier with Hydrilla Gorilla Guide Service here on Lake Guntersville. Today's date is April 25th, 2025, and this is What's on the Deck. So this week, we continue to see a lot of fish transition from the shallows out to those mid-depth ranges, and there are still some fish up running around the shallows, and you can definitely catch some up there. And we did a little bit of that as well this week, depending on my clientele and what their preference was. Up in the shallows, definitely going with soft plastics right now seems to be a mainstay. So a wacky worm or wacky rig Cinco is going to be a great option, as well as taking a Nico rig. This is the Ultra Vibe Speed Worm, and taking it and putting a nail weight in the end of it. Make sure that you do take the time to put some Avid Anglers Solutions fishing glue on that weight, because if you don't, a lot of these will actually get slung out as the fish comes up and throws its head around. The weight will tend to get slung out of your soft plastic. Another thing that I actually did is some of the rubber bands that I had, some were a size large, just a hair too big for the Ultra Vibe Speed Worm. It's just a little bit smaller than the Cinco, so I ended up putting 2 of the little rubber collars on there. You can see one's black, one's red. That definitely made a difference, as well as, you know, making sure that the worm itself didn't get slung off the hook, because I did actually go through several bags last week before I made that adjustment. So since I've done that, I've not actually had any of them get thrown off. So just a thought, you know, as far as a modification that you can do to help in those type scenarios, that extra band definitely made a big difference. So as we transition out just a little bit deeper, we got into some of the sparser grass, and around those areas I ended up picking up a drop shot as well. So working shell bars right now, or hard pan areas that have kind of sporadic grass in the area, a drop shot right now is a really good option. That one is Elastec. I really like this on a drop shot. The reason why is it tends to stay horizontal in the water column. Even though I'm running an EWG hook, I think it's either a 1 or a 1/0 hook on that. But because of the Elastec floats, it keeps that bait horizontal instead of it falling down in the water like this, like it would with most standard soft plastics. So if you've not tried those, that is the Z-Man. They're called the long shots. It's about a 6-inch worm, but it is Elastec, so it will float. I got on that last year using those and caught an absolute ton of fish on them. What I really like is, again, you're not going to go through a lot of baits due to the plastics getting tore up. So I'm all about trying to save money, especially with guiding. We go through a lot of soft plastics and whatnot, so I try to do what I can to preserve the soft plastics, whether it be, you know, gluing the bait or using Elastec in certain circumstances can help to cut down on the amount of cost. But another thing that we're doing with our soft plastics this week, of course, is going to be adding Thump Gel. Adding scent to your bait right now definitely will make a difference. One of the soft plastics that I use as well for the Nico rig is just the standard speed worm. So again, it's got the weight in the end of it. You can see the weight there. And then the double collar. And then I was chartreusing the tip on that. So up and around those bedding areas, we had quite a bit of stain in the water this week. Certain sides of the lake, if the wind was blowing across, would get trashed pretty quick from the wave action, and we'd have quite a bit of color in the water. So making the adjustments with going with the dark color bait, as well as adding a little pin of chartreuse, can make a difference, again, in the number of fish that you end up catching. Again, as we move out a little bit deeper, kind of again in that hard pan area, those shell bars, very sparse grass areas, was taking a wobble head and just putting Ultra Vibe or I'm sorry, a rage craw on there, and just slow crawling that along the bottom. You don't have to hop or bump it. Basically, you can just slow reel that along the bottom and let that head kind of kick along as it's going, and then the action off of those claws will definitely get the attention of the fish, because it's kicking up a little bit of silt from the head, and then the claws, of course, kicking around. So as far as moving baits, we definitely stuck with our mainstay that has been on the deck every single trip this year, is going to be a chatterbait. And we ended up going with 2 options this week, which is, if you notice, one is a lot longer profile than the other. So the biggest issue here is again, looking at the shad that were around. There was some groups that I got into that looked like they were in that 3.5, 4-inch range, and then others that were in that 5-inch class. And where I had the 5-inch class, I was going with that larger profile. Seemed to make a difference in matching the hatch, as well as not being too large of a profile on those smaller thread fin. The producer swim baits, again, this week produced really well. Again, I'm running that on that Flashy Swimmer from Owner. It's a 6/0 3/8 ounce hook, and I actually had a post this week where I show this sitting in one of the fish's mouth. That specific fish, I was going to give a tip here. That specific fish, actually, there was a group of about 4 fish that were following the bait. And I saw it on live scope. One shoots up off the bottom, runs up, hits the bait, and with me watching it, of course, the second you feel it, you want to react, which I knew better than to do, but I ended up doing it anyway. Pulled the bait right out of his mouth. Well, when it shot away from those fish, another one shot up and grabbed it. Ended up being like 4.5, 4 3/4, something like that. But that's the size class fish that was following this bait. And the tip is basically, when you feel that initial hit on a swim bait, don't set the hook immediately. I had a guy reach out to me this week actually asking that specific question. He said, I ordered some producer swim baits. I was throwing a larger profile and I was getting phenomenal bites, but then when I'd set the hook, I ended up not actually hooking up. What was I doing wrong? Delay your hook set. The second you feel that tick, don't swing. Just keep reeling until it loads. When you feel the weight of the fish against that swim bait, that's when you pull into the fish. If you are throwing a swim bait and you set the hook, immediately, the second you feel that tick, you'll miss a lot of fish by doing that. So slow down, take your time, just keep reeling until you feel the weight. That same thing with the next bait, which is a swim jig. I do the same thing. You'll feel that tick, just keep reeling. The second you feel it, then pull in. Make a big difference, because you need to be able to collapse that brush guard. And you know, it's a heavy gauge hook. That's a 3/4 ounce swim bait, and I'm taking that basically in that 8, 9, 10 foot of water on those outside grass clumps that are growing right now. We are starting to see some clumpy grass starting to grow out in those depths, and getting that down and kind of pulling it through those clumps is a really good technique right now. So that's basically it on my swim bait style stuff. Everything else is pretty much hard baits, and not a big selection as far as the type of baits that I threw this week, but more so just changing in weight or color. A good example of that is the lipless. So as I mentioned last week, I ran into shad spawn twice now so far this year, and in both circumstances the fish were up pretty shallow. When they're up pretty shallow, taking a lighter 1/2 ounce red eye shad, this runs really well in that 2 to 3 foot of water. Does not do real well in deeper water. It also will tend to run up on its side a little bit if it's not tuned correctly. So if you got a pair of pliers in there, you know, tune the top of that bait to make sure that it is running straight back to you and not wanting to, you know, get kicked off kilter and stay up on its side. It needs to come back down to true. So the other 1/2 ounce bait that I was throwing as well is, of course, the old Excalibur one knocker. So not on the market anymore, but Booyah still is making the bait. I'm not sure whether or not that color is available or not, because this is the original Excalibur, but basically it's more so chrome sides versus painted sides. So the painted sides I was using on those cloudier days, low light conditions, cloudy days, that type of deal. If the sun was out shining, I'm going with the chrome. So the other option that I had on the deck this week was also the 6 cents Quake 70. That's a 5/8 ounce bait. So that allowed for me to work that little deeper water column. I can actually work that one out into that 7-8 foot of water without a problem, and be able to still work, you know, ticking the tops of the grass and getting the bites out there in that deeper water column where I can't do that with that red eye shad. So kind of kept a few options on the deck as far as lipless, just due to the amount of sun as well as the water depth. Kind of the same deal with the next bait, which is going to be the Rapala DT series. So this is a DT6, and then we also ran the DT10. So again, based on water depth that I'm fishing, as well as colors, so more shad profile, a little bit of bright. If you've got dirty water situation, adding that little bit of chartreuse can make a big difference, as well as, you know, the further that we get to these fish moving out into deeper water, the chartreuse can also be a really good option early season with that. Last with the hard baits was a square bill. So if you're in a situation where the shad are up really shallow and you cannot get a lipless up there, the grass has gotten too thick, you can go with a top water or a shallow running square bill. If you know your square bills and how deep they run, it will make a difference, because you don't want to be burying in the grass here. And I'm not even really looking to tick the grass. This is the one time where the fish are feeding up. If they're definitely feeding on shad type situation where, you know, you got a shad spawn going on, those fish are feeding up in the water column. So you don't really want to be down buried or ticking the tops of the grass. You want to be above the fish. Let the fish come up and feed the way that they're wanting to feed. So that was pretty much it this week. I had mentioned to you guys last week, and I'm going to go ahead and go over it again this week, because this is fixing to come into play for myself as well. But shout out to Mike Carter. Mike's already doing this and having really good results, which is the bull shad. The bull shad wake especially. And then also the bull gill wake. Mike's been already putting these to work and catching some really good bags. So that is something that's fixing to come into play if I've got the clientele that, you know, is looking to do that. Another great option right now is going to be breaking out your swim baits. So that's the Trick Shad by Bull Shad. Absolutely phenomenal chop style glide bait. It's got one of the best actions you're going to find in a glide bait. But your standard swim baits, great option is going to be your 6-inch bull shad and the gizzard color, as well as just your bull gill. That box now is going to be in my boat, and those baits are going to be getting put to work from here going forward. So I mean, basically I got a full box of them, and that has now been transitioned into the boat full time, and hopefully I've got some clients that are willing to go out and do that. You're not looking for, you know, 30, 40, 50 fish in a day. You're looking for, you know, 5 to maybe 10 fish in a 6-hour session. But they're going to be some really good quality. Mike actually had one of his clients that had one that was over 8 pounds come off on him on that bull wake. So if you don't have any and you're looking for, you know, your new PB, that's a phenomenal bait to add to your arsenal to go out, and you're going to have to dedicate yourself to doing it. You know, it's not something that's going to be, you go out one time, throw it for an hour, and you just catch your fish. It's going to take a little bit of work to figure out exactly how to do that. If you are interested in that, I would say definitely, you know, look into booking a guide that can teach you the ins and outs of that specific style of fishing. It's definitely a little bit different, but it will get you that big bite if that's what you're looking for. Especially great for, you know, tournament guys who are looking to go out and catch 5 fish. They're not out there to catch, you know, great numbers of fish. But if you don't have any, I would definitely go ahead and get that on order. A lot of times it can take time to be able to get those in, and not something that you want to be, you know, behind the 8 ball on. So that's pretty much it for this week, guys. I hope this information helps you out going forward into this week out on the water. Hope to see you out there, and until next week, tight lines.